Hello and welcome to the In Touch Show, the Rugby League podcast with Betfred. Delighted to say that this week's guest is England and St Helens women player Jodie Cunningham. Jodie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
So let's get straight into this weekend for you guys. St Helens versus Wigan. Don't get much bigger than this. This must be why you play the game.
Yeah, of course. These are the really big games, are the ones you look forward to all season, and they're earmarked for us. Every time we play Wigan, it's something we really build for, and just really managing your emotions and not letting the occasion get to you. You know, it's a big game for Wigan, it's a big game for us in terms of playoff positions. So yeah, really excited and just want to put a good performance in and really build into that playoff spot.
And obviously, you know, one of the most historic derbies in rugby league. I mean, when it's the game that people know about the most probably is Wigan versus St Helens, apart from maybe the whole derby. Does that play in your mind at all when you're coming into it, or do you just try to play it as another game?
I think for Saints in particular, I think it did last year. I think we put too much emphasis on the fact that it was a derby and it was a big game, and I think that got the better of us, particularly in the playoff game we played them in last year to get into the grand final, and they beat us, and really we were the better side going into that game, so that was really unfortunate. They played really well and they went on to win the grand final. So yeah, I think this year we've managed the occasion loads better, we've managed our emotion a lot better going into the games, and I think that really close victory that we got at the start of the season really got the monkey off our back a little bit and proved we could beat them, and that actually when we play rugby and we play to our game that we can do it. So from then on I think we've played much better each time we've played them, and hopefully this will be the best one yet.
And part of it must just come down to, as it does in the men's code, not only local rivals, but you happen to be two of the best teams in the league, both right up there, you know, looking at those playoff spots. Rivalry aside, this is a big game in terms of, you know, potentially chasing that league leaders shield, but also a home semi-final.
Yeah, of course it is, and you know, as I said, Wigan are the reigning champions of the Women's Super League, so they are a good quality side and we can't take them for granted. They're making sure that they secure that top four. We want to make sure we secure a home playoff game. So really big game for both of us, irrelevant of it being a derby, and we just need to make sure that we go in there prepared and put the best performance we can on.
Have you seen and felt these games grow and get bigger in the Women's Super League as the years have gone by? Do they feel more of an occasion than they ever have done before? Yeah,
definitely. I think now there's that link in with the Men's Super League clubs. It's just natural. It doesn't matter what team's playing. We've seen the LDRL Super League, we've got the PDRL Super League. No matter what form of rugby you're watching, the fans really get behind the fact that it's a Wigan Saints derby, and no matter what, they want their Saints team to beat, you know, whatever representative Wigan side they put out. So yeah, I think you feel the pressure in and around the fans and the club, and you really feel that it means a lot to the people of St Helens and representatively to the people of Wigan for them. So yeah, you do feel it, and it's great. That's what's been fantastic about the Women's Super League, is that's why we're getting fans down, that's why people want to come and watch, and then once they do, they see how great quality rugby league's being played by both sides and also by other teams in the Women's Super League. So hopefully the draw of a Wigan Saints derby will get people down initially, and then they'll become fans going forward.
And you know, you've obviously played at a high level with England as well, but do these games almost feel like internationals in some respects, not only because of the quality but because of the atmosphere and the importance that it has?
Yeah, definitely, and that's a key part of why the RFL and everyone involved in the women's game wanted to create a really high quality Women's Super League where the matches are very competitive, the good quality, because it prepares all the international athletes for when they go and represent England, and it is tough and it is a step up. And I think previously, you know, in seasons gone by, most games were foregone conclusions. You knew who was going to win before it. There'd be an outright winner throughout the season. And that was quite boring as a player, but as a spectator as well, you don't want to go to a game knowing who's going to win before it's played. So I think the fact that it's so competitive now, it's high quality, that there's more athletic players, everybody's fitter, faster, stronger. It really does prepare us for that international level, so that when we get on the big stages for England, that we really can perform.
And you know, obviously we are building up to a home World Cup in a couple of years, which I'll come on to. But just to bring it back slightly, I mean, just talk us kind of your route into playing rugby league, because you were looking at a career in medicine, weren't you, until you decided to do this instead?
Yeah, that was my initial plan. So yeah, it was, you know, typical, go through all your schooling and go to uni and do medicine. That was my plan, and I got selected in the England squad when I was 17. So I started playing initially when I was at school and in high school. So Emily Rudge, who's my England captain, and I'm her captain at St Helen. So it's just brilliant that we still play together at club and country. She'd played with the boys when she was younger and encouraged me to come down and give rugby league a go. I wasn't even a fan of the game, I didn't watch it. But as soon as I started playing, fell in love with it, and now I'm the biggest rugby league nerd you'll ever meet. And from then on, I'd fell in love with it, and all I ever wanted to do then was play and hopefully represent my country, which I was lucky enough to do at 17. So then when I had to make that choice as to what I was going to do at university, it was all coinciding with playing for my country, and I wanted to make sure that I give that everything, and if I really could be a good quality England player, that I wanted to do that. And I don't regret any of my decisions. I've had some of the best moments of my life putting on the England badge, and it gives me so much pride to represent England. So yeah, it's a completely different life path, but one that I'm absolutely positive was the right choice for me.
And you went out to the World Cup in 2017 with England, of course, and disappointing probably to finish in the quarterfinals in the way that you did. Do you feel that as we move into 2021, the group's a lot stronger?
Yeah, and completely different. We had a really, really good side in 2017. I was carrying an injury going into the World Cup, and a couple of others were carrying injuries. We didn't perform how we wanted to perform, and various different reasons, but lack of will and effort wasn't one of them. We really did give it everything, and it was unfortunate that we didn't perform as we would have liked. But now we've got a completely new squad, a lot of retired, loads of really young, good quality athletes, great rugby league players that have come up through the system at the various different clubs. So much younger squad, inexperienced squad, but actually it's not about winning and playing the best rugby league we can now. It's about being ready to do that in 2021 on home soil and win a World Cup. So it's brilliant that these young girls are having the chance to be part of that England squad, go on tours, realise what it takes at that high level to beat Australia, to beat New Zealand, so that we can go and do it in 2021. And they're getting fantastic opportunities now. We're playing in the World Cup Nines, going to Papua New Guinea on a tour. So loads of opportunities for those young players to get that experience, and we'll go into 2021 with a fantastic squad, more than ready to compete and win a World Cup. And
do you think with the kind of the restructure, the realignment of the women's game in the last few years, the launch of the Betfred Women's Super League, the championship below it, and I guess a kind of alignment with the men's game, do you think those pathways to bring that young talent that you must be seeing week in, week out, do you think that's stronger and there's more of a thing for girls coming through the system, so you can go to a World Cup and you can play for England, and those things are possible? Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy because when you're a young girl and you're watching rugby league and you're watching Warrington, Wigan, St Helens, Leeds, big clubs that you love and you adore and you have your heroes, all your heroes are men's players, and you can never go and be the next Kevin Sinfield. You can never go and be the next Sam Burgess, whoever it might be. And you couldn't represent Saints or Wigan or Leeds. You could go and play for a women's amateur side, but that affinity to the club's not quite the same. Whereas now, young girls who are in the stands can come and watch quality. Emily Rudge, absolutely fantastic player for us, has had a brilliant season at St Helens, England captain. They can come down and watch Emily and know that they can be the next Emily Rudge. They can play for St Helens and wear that badge and play at the Totally Wicked Stadium just like all their heroes do that they've been watching for years. And that's a huge draw to keep girls in the game. We see a huge drop off when it gets to sort of 15, 16 years old. When, people are starting college, they've got all different things going on, and they often fall out of the game, whereas we're finding Betfred Women's Super League and the fantastic work all the clubs and foundations are now doing to progress the women's game with physios, strength and conditioners, all the input that they're giving and the fantastic work the RFL are doing. We're just seeing so many more girls wanting to be involved, which naturally just increases the pool of players and the quality at the very top, which is fantastic for me to say. I'm one of the more experienced players now, and I've seen it all the way through from when I started playing, and nobody knew who played the women's game. I didn't know who played the women's game when I started playing as a young girl. So it's fantastic that these girls now, we've got female players on the back, and what a great legacy for the Betfred Women's Super League, but also for the Rugby League World Cup post-2021. Hopefully there'll be many more young girls who are aspiring to be England internationals. And it must be hugely exciting for girls of that age that are starting to come through the system, but also for you guys as players. That must be really exciting and fulfilling that you're able to play that role as role models now on a bigger stage of a higher profile. And and to have so many people coming down to games, and that must be a great feeling.
It is, yeah, and it's strange. I think, for the first time people wanted my autograph or would ask me for a picture. I think they were joking. It was so strange at first, and then you realise the impact you are having on young girls, because you can't be what you can't see. So if you've never seen a woman play rugby league at the top level, then you never know that could be you one day. So we're seeing that a lot, where young girls are finally seeing that there's a pathway for them to represent St Helens, to represent England, and do it on the top stage. I mean, in 2021 we'll be playing at the likes of Anfield, Old Trafford, Headingley Stadium. That's amazing for any female athletes to play on such fantastic, worldwide renowned stadiums. So there really is amazing opportunities to be had by being involved in women's rugby league, which there never has been before. So I think we have a lot of responsibility as the first sort of crop of women's players who are in the spotlight, to make sure that we represent the women's game well, and that we're great role models for the young girls looking at the game for the first time, and hopefully going to be the next ones like us to take over and represent St Helens and England and whatever their team is.
And you're working with the World Cup as an ambassador now, aren't you? But purely from an England international perspective, when it was announced that they were taking the Women's World Cup to those stadiums and they were backing it in that way, that must have been such a boost. You must have been bouncing off the walls when those announcements were coming through.
Yeah, I started working for the World Cup in January of this year, so early January, and the host announcements were late January, so I found out a week or so before we did the announcements where they were going to be, and I genuinely didn't believe it. It was so close to us announcing it, and I still thought, there's no way the women's games are going to be played at Anfield, Old Trafford. That's huge, it's massive. And I was desperate to tell all my family, because they're all big Liverpool fans, that I actually might have the opportunity to go out and represent my country at Anfield. So when I finally got a chance to, we did the big announcement, it was fantastic, and say that we're going to be at Old Trafford, we're going to be at Anfield, it's fantastic for the women's game. It was such a proud moment, not just for me as a player to hopefully have that chance, but just for the women's game to see how far it's come, and that people are finally getting behind it and realising what a good quality product it is. And off the back of that, it's bringing in great sponsorship like Betfred to support the game and realise its worth, and hopefully get it out there to more fans.
And I remember at the last home World Cup in 2013, I mean, what a buzz that was, with like full stadiums for group games, and not just England games, but across the tournament, and 75,000 at Wembley, Old Trafford was full on finals day.
Yeah. The
fact that they've now pulled in the Women's World Cup and the Wheelchair World Cup to match, such an opportunity here, isn't there, for the sport over that period of 6-8 weeks to make as much noise as it can and really put itself on the world stage across all formats.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. I think rugby league's special because that's its unique selling point, is how inclusive it is. Across the Super League and the RFL, there's so many different formats for any individual who wants to play Masters, PDRL, LDRL. There's so many different formats. So the fact that the World Cup, on the biggest stages in the world, they're incorporating the women's competition and the wheelchair competition at top quality stadiums, all ran at the same time, the exact same facilities and requirements involved. It's just unbelievable, and it's a huge statement. And I think by the World Cup making that statement so far in advance as well, I think it's really key. It gives everybody the chance to really invest in it, grow the sport, so that it gets to 2021 and we can embrace the legacy that having that really inclusive World Cup will leave, hopefully post 2021. So
could you just give us a kind of a brief overview, I guess, of what your role as a World Cup ambassador is?
So I got asked to be the women's ambassador initially. So because they're running the men's, women's and wheelchair together, it's all about raising the profile of the women's game and the wheelchair game leading up to the World Cup, because prior to this, as I've said, there's not really been much profile at all, particularly for the women's game, but also after speaking to James Simpson, who's the wheelchair ambassador, very little for the wheelchair as well. So we got brought on board to just whenever there was any events or big occasions, so that we could be there as a player and talk about our experiences on the international stage. Off the back of that, I was really enjoying it and hopefully doing a good job, because they said that they'd like me to come on board with the World Cup full time. So day to day now, still represent the women's side as an ambassador at events, but day to day I work on the legacy programme. So we've got a fantastic programme delivered by Tracy Power, who's the legacy lead. And there's all sorts of projects going on under legacy, from health programmes focusing on mental health, dementia in the communities, education programmes focusing on playing rugby league, but not just that, cross-curricular work, maths, English, science, really just providing all different opportunities for different community groups and all different ages to get involved in the World Cup, even if it's not in playing or watching as a spectator, but to get involved in the projects and the legacy work we're doing to hopefully engage with the communities and leave our communities in a better place. We've got £10 million worth of funding that's going to go into community projects, building clubhouses, changing rooms, 3G pitches, all that sort of work in our communities that really need it. And many rugby league clubs are really the sort of the central point of their communities, a real community hub. So lots of people are going to be able to benefit from the legacy that the World Cup will leave. So I'm just really glad to be part of that and so fortunate to be working alongside a great team.
And I guess, a good point of comparison would be we've just had the Cricket World Cup and seeing the impact that that's had. The England men's team, Rugby League, are building and have been since before the last World Cup. As you said, the England women's team, similar. I mean, some home success would just be enormous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that's what's hard, really. When you're working on the tournament, you can prepare so much and you can deliver the best quality legacy programme, actual tournament, all the different other aspects. But at the end of the day, so much rides on the actual rugby league that's played on the day for each of the games, and particularly in how well England does in all the different tournaments. So we know we're in a great position for England to get to a final and hopefully win in each tournament. The wheelchair team have been out and they've recently been on a tour to France, and they beat France, who are the current World Cup holders in the wheelchair game. So each tournament is in a fantastic place, but we just need to make sure that in 2021 we really are in the strongest place possible to make sure we can compete and win, because the legacy across the game that winning a World Cup will leave is huge, and the impact that it'll have, like we've seen with the cricket, it is massive, because you want people talking about rugby league, and hopefully winning a World Cup will do that.
You must, in some respects, feel like you're planning your own birthday party looking at this, though. You must be working on it day in, day out and thinking, just get me to Anfield now. Yeah,
to be fair, it's sort of added pressure, really, to get there. You want it to come really soon. As a player, I want to play now. Working on it and knowing how much we've got to do and what we want to achieve in that time, you want it to push back, because you want to make sure you've got time to deliver the best tournament we possibly can. But yeah, it is a strange one, helping to sort of plan and develop a World Cup that I'll hopefully be competing in. I think a lot of people, whilst I'm working on it, think that I'm done and I've retired, and very much not, very much still going and hoping to compete in that World Cup. So either way, October, November of 2021 is going to be a very busy time for me, either as a player or, as an employee of the World Cup, making sure that it's the best one yet.
And just to come back to what's going on right now, I mean, you've said that, a self-confessed rugby league nerd these days. We've got an incredible night coming up on Friday with so much at hand. I can't remember a season when it came down to the last day and there was still so much undecided. But also, for your club, St Helens, bar that Challenge Cup final day, a really good year.
Yep.
Bit of a bombshell when Justin Holbrook announced he was leaving, but announced today that Christian Wolf's coming in.
Yep.
Is there what's the feeling? Is it apprehension, nerves, excitement, all of the above around the club and the town at the moment?
Yeah, all of the above. I think it's always hard when you've performed so well throughout the season. St Helens, I think nobody would argue that they've been by far the best team this season, and they've secured League Leaders Shield so early on in the season because they've had so many resounding wins. But I think after losing that Challenge Cup final, there's obviously a lot of pressure on St Helens now to make sure that they go to the grand final and get a victory, because it's what they deserve based on a season worth of great performances. But rugby league and sport in general is not about what you deserve, so there's a lot of hard work to be done, and they're going to make sure there's no repeat of that Challenge Cup final. They're going to be prepared for it, and they're doing all the right things. And I think Justin Holbrook's going to want to go out on a high. He's done a fantastic job at the club, absolutely amazing coach, so he's going to want to make sure that his last game is a grand final win for St Helens. And
you've got a couple more weeks being able to watch on as a neutral about anything relatively crucial happening for St Helens. Friday night, 4 teams in that relegation battle, all on 20 points. There's 4 playoff places that could all chop and change. I mean, we've not had I can't remember one night like this in Super League history, really.
No, it's exciting, and as a spectator, not being part of any of those clubs, it's absolutely amazing and great television, and I love it. I love that it's come down to the last game. When it's decided so early on, like the league leaders was decided so early on, it's great that we've had the bottom of the table to really keep us invested and so exciting, and every game's been important. There's been no sort of nothing games this year, which is fantastic for the whole league. But if I was part of one of them clubs, it's tough, and I'm sure they're not quite enjoying it this week. There's a lot of pressure on them, but that's what sport's about, and that's why we all love it, I suppose, and I'm sure they're getting all the preparations right for the big game.
It's funny because we moved away from that Super 8 system, which, split opinions to an extent. We moved away from that £1 million game. We've almost ended up with £3 million games on one night. I mean, as a player, if you were going into an environment like this, I can't imagine where the heads of those players, it must be different at every club, particularly for London. They must almost feel like they've got a cup final coming up.
Yeah, it is. It is like a cup final. That's what it's like. And as you say, £3 million games. And it's tough as a player, and I think it's tough for the clubs in terms of planning for next year. Yeah. I think that's what's always been the issue, is there's such a difference between Championship and Super League in terms of funding and all different aspects in terms of players' wages. So it's great in terms of a spectator for watching, but as a player and as a coach and as an owner of a club, it's difficult because you can't plan for next year. Any of those 4 clubs at the bottom now are really just making sure they secure survival, but there's players who don't know where their future lies. They've got to sign contracts for next year, and it's hard to secure at a club. London have done fantastic with the team they've had. They've really played together as a team. A lot are going to move on next year. If they could have, secured survival a few weeks prior, a month prior, I'm sure they would have kept more of those players. But it is a difficult time for the club. But London, I think particularly, they've done so well, and just getting to this point is probably more than anyone expected. So for them, I hope they get the result that they want at the weekend, just for, I think, the hard work at the club. Danny Ward's done fantastic, and he really does deserve all the accolades he's going to get at the end of this year.
And at the top end, with it coming, with the playoff system as it is, it's so much more beneficial, obviously, to finish towards the top, and there's so many teams just so close to each other. I mean, that in itself is going to be exciting across this weekend. But as you look towards that playoff section that we've got this year, this playoff series, is there any one team that you'd really want to stay clear of?
I think Hull FC would have fell into that category a few weeks ago. They don't quite look like they're working. They are the epitome of inconsistency this year. They can be fantastic. Jake Connor, fantastic player when he wants to be, at times off the ball, and that's been Hull FC in general, and they're an exciting team to watch because you never know what you're going to get. So I think Hull FC particularly, you wouldn't want to draw in a playoff game if they manage to get themselves into that 5. You wouldn't want to draw them because they can turn on a fantastic performance. Salford equally have really outperformed what anyone would have expected, potentially finish second with a great performance if they get one on this weekend. So Salford again, I wouldn't want to draw Salford in a playoff game. It's a tough one really, and for St Helens and Warrington, who've sort of been that top 1-2 place all season, they're going to come into this playoff game, these playoff games now, not too confident really, because there's teams there who, for one-off games when they need to, can turn up and perform. So it's exciting and it's fantastic for the league.
And we're all looking at that grand final on October the 12th, but obviously you'll be hoping to be there, having won the grand final yourself the night before. Do you think it's a benefit for the women's game, an exciting thing to play those semi-finals almost as a grand final, almost as a double header across the weekend? Yeah,
it is. It's fantastic, and slightly determined by the World Cup 9s that we've got coming up for England as to when our grand final would be. But yeah, for us it's fantastic. It's going to be played at St Helens at the Totally Wicked. So for us, obviously we want to make sure we get there. I think with the team we've got and how we've performed this season and how we're building into it, we should be able to get ourselves there, but we're not taking anything for granted. We're just working hard and making sure that when it comes to playoff games, we've got everybody back fit and we're playing great rugby. So yeah, for us it's fantastic being part of that big grand final weekend, and hopefully we can get quite a few fans down to the Totally Wicked, whichever teams are playing in that final. It should be a fantastic game.
Jodie, thank you so much for coming on the show here with us at Betfred. That is all we've got time for this week. We'll be back next week, and it's all getting slightly serious. It will be a playoff special as we have a look at what will be, well, promises to be a really exciting playoff series. We're also on Facebook Live next Wednesday evening as we look ahead to the playoffs. We've got a really good weekend of rugby league this weekend, and well, 4 or 5 weeks more to come. It's going to be superb. Thank you for joining us on the In Touch Show, and we'll be back next week with more.